item on our agenda, Part B, just trying to be a little flexible here. And this is the Department of the California Highway Patrol. We have one item that is suggested for vote only. It is on page 1 of our Part B agenda. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this issue? All right. Is there any objection to taking the matter up on a vote-only basis? All right. If not, let's ask the staff to call the roll.
Senator.
Excuse me. A motion from Senator Fuller. Forgive me. We have a motion by Senator Fuller to approve the vote-only items.
Senator Simitian.
Aye.
Senator Fuller. Aye. Senator Lowenthal.
2-0. That is sufficient. We have one member absent, and we'll hold the roll open, and that will allow our colleagues from the California Highway Patrol to go about their business. Thank you very much.
Chairman Simitian, Senator Fuller, thank you so much.
Did a heck of a job, okay? Thank you. Heck of a job. All right, so back to our regular agenda, and again, we're going to go as far as we can, but we will not be taking up transportation issues until 2 o'clock this afternoon. And actually, we could ask transportation staff to come back for just 1 minute, please. And if we could let folks who want to clear the room, clear the room. All right, thank you. Welcome back. Senator Lowenthal, we expect back in about 10-15 minutes, and if there are other items where there's a vote, we'll hold the roll open for him. We are now at page 17, Department of Water Resources. We have some items here that are also proposed for vote only. And unless there is objection or public comment, we'll take a single vote on items 1 and 2 contained on pages 17 and 18 of our Part A agenda. Do we have comment on? But not on the items 1 and 2? Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to ask for a motion on, we're going to divide the question for purposes of vote. On item number 1, could we get a motion, please? Motion by Senator Fuller. Call the roll.
Senator Simitian.
Aye.
Senator Fuller. Aye. Senator Lowenthal.
2-0. That is sufficient, but we'll hold the roll open for absent members. Item number 2, Senator Fuller, could I ask you for a courtesy motion? We have a motion on item number 2. Call the roll.
Senator Simitian.
Aye.
Senator Fuller. Senator Lowenthal.
1-1, and that is not sufficient, but we're going to hold the roll open for absent members. Then that takes us to DWR, the Water Master fee issue. It's not on that agenda. Well, let's pause for a minute. Hang on just a second, folks. Let me ask the witness to come forward and give us one sentence on the topic she wants to discuss. If it's not agendized, that presents a challenge, but let's see what the issue is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Martha Guzman, California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation. The issue is really just to have some oversight on some grants that have taken over 2 years for the department to roll out for disadvantaged communities, technical assistance and outreach in the integrated regional water.
Let me ask you to stop there and ask staff if there's any place on the agenda that might be appropriate for this testimony. There is a general fund reduction item that is on the agenda.
Okay.
And it is on page 20.
Yes.
And we're going to ask you to come up at that time. So hold that thought, please. All right. Water master fees. Now, back on track. Why don't we ask the department to begin by presenting the proposal. Help us understand what's going on here.
So I'm Curtis Anderson. I manage the Northern Region Office of the Department of Water Resources. And the proposal is a shift from a general fund of $1.25 million to a shift of charging the water users for the fee and would be collected by the Department of Water Resources. So it would be a shifting of the fees, and this would be compliant with existing California Water Code that says that the water users shall pay the cost of the Water Master service. That was changed by, I believe, a Senate bill in 2004.
Thank you. Finance, any comments?
Nothing more to add.
LAO.
We agree that this is an appropriate application of beneficiary pays. Thank you.
Do we have members of the public who wish to testify? Please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Simitian, Senator Fuller, Justin Oldfield, California Cattlemen's Association. I understand, based on statute, changes that were made in 2004. However, this is a pretty big impact to our membership. That being said, I just want to share a few dollar figures with you. There are a handful of watersheds in California that are administered by a water master, the allocation of that water by a water master. A couple of examples, I've received phone calls from members of mine up in Siskiyou County. They already pay a large portion of that in fees, and then obviously some of that is offset by general fund money. Right now, one member said, a producer up in Siskiyou County said they pay about $3,500 a year to maintain their water master. Their fees would go up to $14,000. In Sierra Valley, north of Truckee, I just talked to a member a few minutes ago. He said right now he's currently paying about $7,000 for his water master fee. His would likely go up to $18,000. Now, in terms of production of livestock on irrigated pasture, I doubt those folks will even irrigate their pastures and turn livestock out because you can't even cover the cost there with that margin. So while I understand the changes that were made in 2004, I guess from our position, we'd like that money to be maintained until we obviously need to come up with a long-term fix based on the statute, but that we continue to provide some general fund support there until we can come up with that fix. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. Other witnesses, please come forward.
Thank you, Chairman, Senator. Danny Merkley with the California Farm Bureau. I would just reiterate what Mr. Oldfield said, as well as suggest that we've been working with members in Siskiyou, Shasta, and Tehama counties, as well as previously in MODOC, to petition the courts to transfer the water master from DWR to water mastering in their own special districts. And until that is complete, this will be a significant hit on them. It will still be more expensive for them to water master themselves than what is currently being done, but it's a little bit in between the two.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask the department, do the levels of increase that you heard sound right to you?
Yes, they do. It's basically in 2004, we sent out billing letters to basically push off the 100% of the cost of the water master. There was a big uproar, a bunch of things that came out, and this general fund came out to help basically bridge that gap. And we were, the Siskiyou County water master areas have been fixed since 1994. So they're paying currently about, their fees would multiply by 7. In Indian Creek, it would go by 5 times the fees, and Sierra Valley would be 2.6. So that's what it is because it's been held fixed, and we've had this general fund subsidy. Not subsidy, but...
And, the great thing about this subcommittee is you learn something new every time you sit down. So do I understand it, though, that the statute has said it's supposed to be paid for by the user since 2004?
Yes.
And I don't mean this in a flippant way. And how is it that the decision was made that even though that's what the statute said, we weren't going to do that?
I think it was under consideration, particularly in Siskiyou County, because of the coho issues and the Department of Fish and Game's efforts to move forward with an incidental take permit, and the burden that was going to have on the landowners, that there was financial help to help the people that would have to pay these increased fees.
I understand the rationale. I'm just trying to figure out how we've gone 7 years. I mean, if I understand you correctly, the fee structure is clearly inconsistent with existing state law pursuant to statute from 2004. Am I understanding you correctly, or have I misstated the facts?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so, ordinarily, we like to follow the rules, and when we pass a statute, we like to think that people are going to abide by it. So, I mean, so somebody made a decision somewhere that may say that in state statute, but as a practical matter, the impacts are too severe, and therefore we're going to continue to backfill it with the general fund, and that's what was proposed in the budget every year, and until now it's just gone by as a matter of course.
That's my understanding.
Finance, got any wisdom to share on this? I'm just a little perplexed, as you can tell.
We were somewhat perplexed as well. I have no additional comments to make on it or explanation.
Mr. Favarine-Charbot, are you perplexed as well?
I am perplexed.
Okay. And coming up to help reduce our perplexity is whom?
My name is Mike Might. I'm the budget officer for the department. Back in fiscal year 6-7, the department did propose essentially the same proposal before you today to shift the Water Master Program onto fees. And it was approved, both sides of the legislature, Senate and Assembly, and then through Big Five discussions and conference committee, it was put back on. They actually increased the general fund because of the issues that you've heard today. And that's where we are now.
Did anybody in those discussions say maybe we ought to do something about the fact that there's a state statute that I believe everybody's saying we're in violation of?
I was not part of the discussions. I'm not sure exactly what was said.
Okay. Senator Fuller?
So as part of the perplexedness going on up here. So has the public benefit part substantially added onto this problem, or was that in statute, or is this like fee partly being raised with new pieces to it?
Let me jump in, if I may. I think, just to make sure that we get, I want to make sure I understand the question, and I think I share it. So in 2004, the law changed, and now the statute says there's a group of beneficiaries, and they have to pick up the tab 100%, and the public should no longer be backfilling this with general fund money because it's all for private benefit, more or less. Is that the statute?
Yes.
Okay.
But
And I'm sorry if I interrupted your train of thought, Senator.
That's exactly it. I guess what I'm basically trying to figure out is, okay, if paying for the water master is like one thing, and then paying for, like, how did the full range of public benefits become defined in this and add on to this cost? Like, if depending on what the public benefits definition was, or what costs were thrown in inclusion, the rate might not have to jump like 7 times.
And that's an issue. I was up in the Siskiyou Board of Supervisors, had a special session to discuss this up in Wairika yesterday. I was there, and that was one of the points they made. If they have a district, they could take over the water master duties, and they said they're going to, to be flippant, to charge the state of California for water mastering the public benefit part of the flow of the river that's not diverted to the water users.
So that presumably there was a debate in 2004 about whether or not there was or wasn't any public benefit. When the statute passed, the statute took the view that 100% of the cost should be borne by the fee payers because it was all private benefit. But there was an argument, remains an argument about how much of this is really a public benefit. Am I getting this right?
I think it's just a pushback of, that there are waters of the U.S. down below the diversion points, and that's part of the calculations into being a water master. So if they're having to pay that cost, they should share that with the public benefit side, is what the discussion in Wairika was.
Okay. Well, on the one hand, on the other hand, as is so often the case in this committee, if hearing about the fee increases, I have to say they're pretty dramatic fee increases. I suppose you could take the view that if it's a difference between $3,500 and $14,000, that somebody's been getting a $10,000 a year benefit for the last 7 years, and we should get a thank you note for their $70,000 in savings. I'm not expecting that note to arrive anytime soon. I think what we're more likely to get is someone who's understandably unhappy about a jump from $3,500 to $14,000. The staff recommendation, which the chair is going to support, notwithstanding the confusion here, is to approve as budgeted. And I think we've talked this one out as much as we can. As a courtesy, thank you, Senator Fuller. We have a motion from Senator Fuller. Please, anything else, gentlemen? Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Senator Simitian.
Aye.
Senator Fuller. Senator Lowenthal.
That measure stands at 1-1, requires 2 votes for passage. We will hold the roll open for absent members. All right? Thank you. Fascinating. Not satisfying, but fascinating. So there you go. All right, that takes us to page 20, which is the Governor's May revision proposal. And there is some general fund reduction here. Let me ask the department to present the proposal. Welcome.
Good morning. Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee, I'm Kathy Kishaba. I'm the Deputy Director for Business Operations at the Department of Water Resources. And we've put forward a $1.8 million general fund reduction, which is a control section item. The cuts would come from the California Water Plan, the North Delta Program, components of the Flood Management Program, and the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. So those are the programs in front of you today.
And members, this is an issue that will be taken up formally in Subcommittee 4, but so no actions necessary on these items. But I did think it's useful to ask: does the department plan to backfill any of the reduction with either bond funds or other fee-payer funds?
Actually, no. We don't plan to backfill these $1.8 million reductions with bond funds. However, I will say that there is existing authority within our Proposition 1E budget to cover the North Delta or the North Delta Flood program. So we would be using existing authority to continue activities in that area.
All right. Thank you. And so if we're cutting this $1.8 million, what are we not going to get done as a result? What's the impact?
Oh, sure. Okay, in the California Water Plan area, what we would be cutting back is funding that would go to stakeholder collaboration, coordination, and outreach. We would also be cutting back a small portion of funding that is needed for land and water use data collection. And that information is what supports the California Water Plan. For the flood management program, we're looking at a cut to flood risk notification and also the Central Valley floodplain evaluation and delineation. The Central Valley Flood Protection Board would also take a cut, and that would impact their ability to enforce encroachments.
All right, thank you. Why don't we, I don't have any other questions on this item at this time. It is, as I say, formally going to be taken up in Budget Subcommittee 4. If we have witnesses, why don't we ask them to come up at this point? And if we could ask someone at the table to just hand their microphone down the table, that'll work. Thank you.
Again, Mr. Chairman, this is an item that has been before the committee in approximately 2 years ago from the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan program, where 5 pilot programs throughout the state in targeted IRWIMP programs were developing pilot programs. And I think there's been some attempt to troubleshoot this, but really what we're asking for from you today is that the committee provide this much needed oversight so that these contracts could finally get executed and on the ground, so that the disadvantaged communities in those targeted program areas can actually more fully engage. And so, again, I'm not sure if there's any action, but we certainly would like to have a report back to the subcommittee so that there is some prioritization of these contracts getting executed.
Well, let's see if there's anyone here from the department who can help shed some light on it today, and then we can talk about and I'm sure it'll be a good conversation now that I'm all by myself, so we can talk about where we might go from there.
Yes, my name is Paula Landis. I'm Chief of the Division of Integrated Regional Water Management for the California Department of Water Resources. And yes, these are pilot projects. We have agreed to fund them. We see a great deal of value in them, and we expect that that money will be out in the immediate future. As far as the delay goes, we regret that. It's not any lack of effort. The grant programs are very involved, and as you know, we've had bond fund issues. It is bond fund money, and we've had stop work projects. We've had a number of issues that have slowed things down, but we're on track to get that money out.
It's been my experience during my time in the legislature that different people mean different things when they say the immediate future. Could you help put some boundaries around that for us?
Yeah, I have said that because I didn't want to be specific, but I didn't.
I thought as much. So.
Darn it. But I am anticipating within probably the next 3 months.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for raising the issue. Thank you for clarifying the status. I am going to ask our committee staff and my personal staff to follow up with you all and make sure that all this happens in the next few months, and if there are impediments that we understand what they are so that we can clear them away.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
And we will keep our colleagues informed on both sides of the aisle just so everybody knows what's going on. All right, that takes us to page 21, mercury and methylmercury monitoring and control studies. And the issue here is a request for 4 full-time positions. And we've had some previous conversation in the committee about cost sharing and who ought to pay for what. And what staff has come back to us with is a recommendation for essentially a 2-year appropriation of environmental license plate fund in the amount of $300,000 per year for the state share of the regulatory compliance. Let me just ask, first of all, does the environmental license plate fund have a sufficient balance to cover that cost over the next couple of years?
Matt Almy, Department of Finance, yes, it does.
All right. And is there an objection to using that approach?
We have no concerns.
Okay. Welcome. Please tell us who you are.
Sure. Dale Hoffman-Florkey, Acting Deputy Director for the Department of Water Resources for Delta and statewide water management. And we would support the use of ELP funds for this effort as well.
Okay. Then, do we have any witnesses on this item? Please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman. Terry Earlywine, General Manager of the State Water Contractors. We represent the water agencies that have contracts with the State Water Project that have to pay for all the costs of the State Water Project. We'd like to iterate our concerns that we stated previously, that we think that the cost allocation for this is really not appropriate. However, do want to thank Senate staff on working to get some level of cost sharing on this. This makes it, I think from our standpoint, a little less inequitable. So really appreciate the effort that has been put in to try to provide some cost sharing on this. And then the other point I wanted to raise was that I think that the description here is maybe oversimplified. It refers to the State Water Project being designated as solely responsible. My recollection of that TMDL was it said that the Department of Water Resources, State Lands Commission, and Central Valley Flood Protection Board were responsible. It talks about State Water Project, and it implies that there's some responsibility, and we're not going to argue that, but I think this overstates what it says. But I do appreciate staff efforts to provide some funding on this.
Okay. Any other witnesses? If not, then we'll ask for a motion on this item.
Move to approve the proposal for positions and the $300,000 for the 2-year environmental license.
All right. We are at page 21 of our published agenda, and Mr. Lowenthal has moved the staff recommendation. We're going to give Ms. Fuller a moment to catch her breath. All good? Call the roll.
Senator Simitian?
Aye.
Senator Fuller? No. Senator Lowenthal?
Aye.
And that passes on a 2-to-1 vote. Thank you all very much.
Could we go back?
What I'd like to do now is go back to the items that remain on call and tidy those up so that we're fully caught up through page 21. Staff will announce the page number, please.
Page 18, vote-only items, number 1 and 2, split vote. Item number 1.
Call the absent members.
Senator Lowenthal.
Aye. Can you tell me how the chair voted?
That measure is 3-0, and that
Thank you.
measure is approved. The second item, which is a vote-only item,
Item 2,
is a 1-1 vote. Chair voting aye.
Item number 2, Senator Lowenthal.
Aye.
Page number 19, water master fees. The recommendation is approved as budgeted.
Senator Lowenthal, I just, even though we're just wrapping a foot, I just have to tell you missed a fascinating discussion.
Really?
In 2004, the state statute provided that these fees were to be fully paid by folks who were using the water master services. And for the last 7 years, we've not followed the state statute. And so the proposal is to fund this fully with fees. The fee increases are not insignificant for folks. On the one hand, they've been the beneficiaries of not having to pay those fee increases for 7 years. On the other hand, the fee increases are not insignificant. There was a 1-1 vote on this, and the chair voting aye.
Oh, you voted aye. I thought it was Senator Fuller.
No, she was kind enough to offer a courtesy motion, but the vote is 1-1, chair voting aye. Call the absent members.
Senator Lowenthal.
Aye.
That measure passes on a 2-to-1 vote, and I believe that completes all of our items that we needed to open the roll on. All right, so we are now at Department of Parks, vote only, page 22. We have just one item on the vote only calendar on page 22. Anybody need to testify on this issue? No, if there's no objection and no testimony, then we will call for a motion to approve. We have a motion from Senator Fuller. Call the roll.
Senator Smidian.
Aye.
Senator Fuller. Senator Lowenthal.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Thank you. That takes us to page 23. And why don't we ask the LAO to present this item and offer their recommendations. And if you'd reintroduce yourself, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Leah Moore, Legislative Analyst's Office. The Parks and Recreation is responsible for first response for a number of law enforcement and medical activities. Fish and Game also uses their dispatch system through a contract for these services. Their current computer program for dispatch is outdated. It has critical delays in response times, which is a public safety issue. They have been trying to develop a new program for the department for several years. There was a feasibility study report approved in 2007 to replace.
Ms. Moore, could you pull that microphone just a little bit closer?
Yes, sorry.
That's all right. We'll hear you loud and clear.
To replace the outdated system with a new model, a computer-aided dispatch or CAD system, which is very similar to what local law enforcement uses for their dispatch. However, the selected vendor that was chosen was unable to fulfill this contract, and so this project has been delayed. The project is in the process of being rescoped. It's becoming a smaller in scope, mostly to avoid some of the risks that they've had previously. The new special project report is still being created. It's not yet available. It has not yet been submitted to the California Technology Agency. The current governor's budget request would revert a previous appropriation that had been unspent of $4.5 million from the general fund for this project, and they would replace this with a like amount of appropriated state park recreation fund money. This is essentially a fund shift for general fund savings, and also an additional appropriation of off-highway vehicle recreation funds of $1.6 million. This money is for the budget year phase of this project. It's not the total cost of the project. Because it's still being rescoped, we don't know what the total cost is yet. The LAO finds that the State Parks Recreation Fund, PRF, is an appropriate alternative fund source for general fund savings. So we recommend the reversion of general fund dollars. And we also feel that the department has demonstrated a need for this project. The system they have is outdated. It does need to be replaced. However, we recommend the denial of the appropriation of special fund or state park recreational fund money and the OHV funds due to a lack of information regarding the scope, total cost, and timeline of this project. We just simply don't have enough information to recommend approval. However, there is on the other hand, yes, there is a trade-off. The department does need this program, and this will create an additional year delay, which the system that they have for dispatch is only getting older and more prone to problems. So although we do feel that approval of this project is premature, we recognize the delay is problematic, and should legislature choose to approve this project, we suggest that budget bill language include a provision for a 30-day legislative review in addition to the project being subject to CTA approval.
CTA standing for?
Sorry, California Technology Agency.
That's you. Okay. All right. Let's ask the department. The proposal seems to have changed since the last time it was before the committee. So what's the new phased approach, and how does this change the funding requirements? Let's walk through it.
We went through the RFP process.
Just, even though we know who you are, if you didn't.
Oh, sorry. Ruth Coleman, Director of State Parks.
Thank you, Ms.
So we went through the RFP process. We found a vendor. The vendor misrepresented what they could do. And so we have fully recovered all costs, but now we're having to rescope this, and we're doing it in conjunction with the California Technology Agency. And so what we have here is a conflict of timing, because we think we'll be done with this new scoping in a couple of months. But you guys have the legitimate role of the legislature that you need to have oversight before you approve funding. And so what we're hoping is to figure out a system with a 30-day notice where we can honor your need to see something, so that we will not spend the money until CTA approves the new scope, and that you guys have a 30-day review window to ensure that we're answering all the questions you have. Because if we don't get the appropriation now, and let's say in 2-3 months' time, we're now done answering all those questions. If we don't have the appropriation authority, then we're just stuck and we can't do anything until the next year's budget cycle. And this issue is extremely frightening for all of us in the field, because we literally are working off of a 15-year-old system. It is no longer supported by Microsoft. So if the system blew, Microsoft wouldn't even return our calls to help us fix it. So we're very much sort of on a thin edge here, and we're both protecting fish and game wardens and park rangers, as well as National Park Service staff, and then, of course, all the public that is involved in it. So we're trying to work on the fact that the legislative cycle and our cycle aren't quite coinciding.
And speaking of Fish and Game, is there a reason why Fish and Game isn't paying for a portion of the proposal?
I might maybe address that. It is certainly true that Fish and Game currently contracts with parks for their existing service. However, in light of the fact that there's a new computer-aided dispatch system under review, Fish and Game's future participation in park systems is somewhat unclear, and it wouldn't be appropriate to it would be somewhat pre-decisional to provide Fish and Game Preservation Fund prior to Fish and Game understanding what the overall scope of the project is prior to CTA approval.
Well, let me push back on that a little bit in the robust fashion that we've come to appreciate here in working with the department. Are they using it right now, the Fish and Game?
They are currently using it right now, and they provide reimbursements to parks for that service, as I understand it.
Okay. So do they provide reimbursement to parks? Let me just check with parks. Okay. So if they were going to continue to use it, would they continue to provide reimbursement?
Yes, that would be my understanding.
Okay. And so you wouldn't be adverse to any budget bill language saying that they had to pay a fair share actual pro rata cost reimbursement going forward if they continue to use it?
Yeah, I think that's acceptable for the operational.
Well, for the actual cost of the system. If it costs $10 for the system and they're using it 20% of the time, then they should pick up 20% of the cost.
I see that. There's another. I'm going to have to maybe ask for the Department of Fish and Game to maybe respond to that type of an alternative. I would say that there's also a structural fund balance problem, although in the Fish and Game Preservation Fund, having said that, it's not like parks special fund has a strong balance either. So on the one hand, on the other hand.
There you go. Is Fish and Game represented here today? Here, why don't we ask them to come on up? I mean, mostly this is sort of about truth in budgeting and making sure that we're being both fair and accurate and appropriate in terms of who's picking up the cost for what. And it just seems like if Fish and Games is a shared user or beneficiary of the system, then, and I see Ms. Coleman's happy to get rid of her microphone as fast as she can on this topic. So what's your take, Fish and Game?
Thank you. Gabe Tiffany, I'm the Department of Fish and Game budget officer, and as Mr. Almy noted, we do pay for like a subscription service to parks, as we're a user of the system. At this point, we are evaluating all options that going forward, including some other options outside of the park system. So it would be, and also the issue of the structural imbalance of the fund. We think it makes it inappropriate for that fund to pay for the cost of the park system.
One maybe option.
I got to ask you to hang just a second. And so you're in review. Seems like nobody's process is on the same timeline as ours. How long do you think your process is going to take to figure it all out?
I would have to get back to you on that process.
Give me an order of magnitude. Is this a year away, or is this 6 months away, or is this 3 months away?
It's probably, I would say, less than a year.
Adam Dondra, California Technology Agency. I just would chime in that part of that will depend on the timeline for determining the SPR for the proposal before you, as seeing what course that takes will have to be taken into account for Fish and Game to determine the most appropriate course of action for them as well.
Mr. Chair, if
I think we had half a dozen different organizations, and we're all waiting for each other to be in the same place at the same time. Yes, Department.
If I may, one of the points the LAO made that I maybe want to highlight is that this particular request is for the budget year costs only. The full cost of the project won't be fully identified until the CTA is done with their approval. One potential option would be to move forward currently with the budget year proposal, and then recognizing that once we get an understanding what the total project cost is and who would be participating, we would have to come back to the legislature anyway to get additional funding. That would provide a more timely venue to discuss who are the beneficiaries, who should pay when looking at this project in totality, rather than just the next step phase for the budget year cost.
Is Fish and Game giving any consideration to having their own system?
At this point, I'm not a technical person, so you have to forgive me, but I don't think that's one of the options at this point. I don't know if.
All right. Well, let me ask.
CTA could.
Is Parks thinking about partnering with some other state agency on this, as opposed to going it alone?
This is all the kind of thing that the CTA directs us on, so we're not always in control of those decisions. So.
Okay. Well.
We just want to get it done as quick as possible.
CTA, so help us pull all these strands together.
Well, the first step is the project that's before you. I mean, the business decision is not one that we make ourselves, but what we've required the different departments to do is to look at all the options that are available before moving forward with a project. That's what's currently going on now. The first step is for Parks to determine if there are other alternatives. Computer-aided dispatch is not singular to Parks. The CHP has a system. There's other systems out there that are off the shelf that could be used. And so we're requiring them to look at all those options, determine what's most effective, what's most cost appropriate, all those sorts of things. Those same options that are available to Parks would also be available to Fish and Game. I haven't heard personally discussions of a separate Fish and Game system. Generally, the technology agency is supportive of consolidation and having as few systems serve as many people as possible, as that's typically the more efficient method. But over the next several months, we'll be working with Parks to look at what the best option is to move forward there and making sure that we do what's most cost effective for the entire state.
Folks, I got to tell you, it sounds to me like it's premature to take action. I mean, if we were, a month or two off here and we wanted to have kind of 30-day, opportunity to review that was referenced. But and I don't mean this critically, it just doesn't sound to me like we're clear yet on where we're headed or how or in what partnership or with whom or at what cost.
I would say the fish and game piece, I think, complicates this a little more than necessary. The park system absolutely needs replacement, and we are only a couple months away from working out some of these details and moving forward with the process. I absolutely understand the concerns with not having enough information. I know the technology agency would certainly not be sitting at this table supporting it if we didn't get the authority to approve or deny the special project report before it went forward. So I would certainly understand the need for the legislature to have that same comfort level. I would, as definitively as I am able to say, within the year we will be ready with a proposal for parks. So should this not move forward, there will be a delay to moving forward.
Well, within the year, I assume means by December 31st, which means that if it was finally sorted out by then, it would be very timely for a January governor's budget proposal and hearings in this committee at that point. I'm sorry, the more we wade into this, the less persuaded I am that we can or should move forward today.
It would be about a 9 to 10 month delay because all that spring next year, we still wouldn't be moving forward. So you're looking at the difference of being able to start moving forward in September, October once we get approval from you. We are asking for a conditional approval. We recognize that this is not a blanket, sure, go ahead, parks, and do this. We're saying
Ms.
contingent
Holland,
on approvals for both of you.
Excuse the interruption, but what is it you're asking us to approve? At this point, I don't know what it is you're asking us to approve, and it's not clear to me that anybody at any of these tables knows what it is you're asking us to approve. What is it you're asking us to approve?
The project, once we get the approval of the approach, then we would start moving forward on the RFP to start moving it out to bid.
So, and forgive me, but so you don't know what the approach is, you don't know what your RFP is, you don't know what the cost is, you don't know who your partners are, and you don't know whether or not they're going to share in the cost. Do I have all my facts straight?
Do you guys want to jump in?
Because if I just said anything that's inaccurate, please correct me, but that's what I heard.
Excuse me, sir. Manuel Lopez, Deputy Director, Administration, California State Parks.
Applaud your courage in rushing forward at this critical time. So,
this is absolutely a critical project for us. Basically, the scope that we're looking at right now, this project was first proposed to do a computer-aided dispatch in one phase, record management system in a second phase, and a mobile communication phase in a third. What we've decided to do is downscope this project into separate phases. So we're asking for funding to do computer-aided dispatch. We can decide at a later date whether we want to go with a second and third phase. Fish and Game, their question right now is whether they want to consolidate with CHP or continue on down the path with state parks. Let
me stop you for a minute, just because I want to track what you're saying.
Sure.
So computer-aided dispatch is the first phase. The other two are what again, please?
Records management system and a mobile dispatch system.
And
our first proposal was basically the entire suite of those three options. The vendor that we selected could not deliver all three solutions, and so we canceled that contract and decided to go out with a reduced scope of just solely focusing on computer-aided dispatch. And that's what you have in front of you is in effect, a new appropriation for SPRF and a reappropriation of State Parks and Recreation Fund, in order to continue on with the efforts that we have underway. We're in a process of revising an SPR which looks at consolidating our hardware and software with a CHP and still being able to deliver dispatch services to the department. So all we're looking at right now is the cost alternative for consolidating with the CHP, as hopefully be able to reduce the long-term cost of our projects.
What does consolidating with the CHP mean?
That means they're currently in the process of implementing a new dispatch system at CHP, and what we're looking at hopefully is be able to utilize the same software platform and potentially the same hardware that they're using to be able to deliver this dispatch services to
And is
parks.
that something that might or might not happen?
It may happen depending on what the cost is. We have to weigh the cost of consolidation with the cost of just going out and buying our own separate software system.
And let me just be clear. I mean, there was an explanation as to why we didn't move forward on the previous plan, and I don't take exception to that, and I applaud you for looking at these various options. But it sounds to me like these are all things that are yet to be done. I'm just not clear how we can ask the committee and our colleagues on the full budget committee to support a project which is yet to be defined with a partner who may or may not be in the mix at a price tag which I gather is not yet known.
Actually, we do have a cost estimate for the pure computer-aided dispatch portion of that. The one question that remains is, are there cost savings associated with consolidation with the CHP? We have already engaged the Gartner Group to look at this particular scenario. It's an option that the CTA has asked us to research further. We should have that information within the next month and be able to update our SPR accordingly. So if we get that information and we get an SPR updated to CTA within the next 2 months and that particular document is approved, we would be waiting 9 to 10 months before we can actually start moving down the path of implementing the recommended alternative.
I'm not sold. Senators Lowenthal and Fuller, what's your pleasure? So different members will have different views on this.
I am concerned about the loss of 8 to 9 months. And as I understand what you're saying is you're limiting the scope. You've come down. You're really just talking about the computerized dispatch system. You're either going to consolidate or you're going to go it alone. You're ready to move forward on that. You're going to get back to CTA, I guess, on that. And those decisions will be made within the next month or two. Correct. And so you would be then in a position. How much money are we talking about in the governor's? Does the governor propose all, the $4.5 million, the reappropriation of 1.6, the reversion of $4.5 million of general fund? Is that all for just the computerized dispatch, or is that for the Cadillac, the other two? That's just for. So we're talking about today. You need an appropriation of $10.6 million. You're talking.
Actually, I believe it's about $6 million.
4.5 is being reverted to the general fund.
Senator Lowenthal, would your concerns, and we'll see where the departments are, but would your concerns about time be assuaged? It occurs to me as we think this through and talk it out. I don't believe there's any reason, Finance, why if we got a proposal in January, we couldn't take action on a current year basis with a proposal in January, and then we'd have a real proposal in front of us, which takes 6 months off the time.
Well, it would have to be separate legislation, it's not part of it wouldn't be part of the 12-13 budget bill because that doesn't get taken effect. But what you'd have to do is you'd have to do a supplemental appropriations bill. It wouldn't be a deficiency because it doesn't qualify as an unanticipated cost since we're talking about it here. So what you'd have to do is approve a separate supplemental appropriations bill for current year funding for the department. That's generally a more elaborate process than just coming to the subcommittee and it gets built into the Budget Act. So it's somewhat a process that's on a different track.
I guess back to your specific question of what is our ask. Our ask would be the approval of the appropriation of the SPRF dollars as well as the reappropriation of the OHV with contingency language that we are not able to spend that money until the CTA approves our SPR as well as securing the legislative approval with a 30-day notice. Right. So basically we would be appropriated, but we wouldn't be able to spend it until the LAO and you folks actually approve it as well as the CTA approves it.
Senator Fuller.
As a former administrator myself, I sympathize with worrying about the delay. But I think that we've had to make so many hard decisions about projects. We knew exactly what the cost is and exactly what was happening and exactly who the partners were and exactly what the time limit was. That I'm just not sure that I can support this as it is at this time, and I think that you may have to find another way to go about inserting it. I do have two questions, though. One is a computer-aided response. Basically, if Microsoft won't support it, generally there are small private vendors that will take care of it for some portion of the time. And second, I'm not sure that that's even necessarily a totally emergency service. So I think it's just all the details are so difficult to discern. I'm just not willing to fund something at this time until I have more details when I'm having to cut things in so many other areas.
And just so we're clear, the system that we're talking about is a DOS-based system that is completely obsolete. There is nothing we can do to that particular system to improve its performance. We can't add memory. We can't improve the servers. There is nothing to do.
And why are we here having this conversation today? So why are we stuck with that system today?
If I may, Tony Perez, Deputy Director of Park Operations, and it's my rangers, my lifeguards representing the Warrens. I don't know why we're here today.
Well, I want to ask you to stop until I get an answer to that question, because here's what, in our role, it's not very satisfying for someone to come and say, we've created a situation that's untenable, and now we want you to act to rescue us from the situation we've created that's untenable by acting on a proposal that is not yet fully fleshed out. We've previously authorized the funding. You've indicated that for some reason you had a bad experience with a vendor, but is there, has the legislature been part of the problem in getting us to this state? No. All right. So my question again is, why are we sitting here talking? You have arrived presenting us with what you call an emergency situation. That's not, that's really not how the process is supposed to work.
Absolutely. The reason why we're here is because we had a selected alternative which is basically a Tier 1, off-the-shelf, computer-aided dispatch system. CTA would like us to explore the issue of consolidation further. That has created some level of delay in order for us to move forward with the procurement process. That's why we're here today, to answer that question of consolidation.
I'm going to pull staff from all three of the staff members who are here into this conversation, if they don't mind being pulled in. I am prepared to go forward on this item, but only with belt and suspenders and belt again on subsequent review by the legislature. And I, as you can tell from my increasing frustration, the department really should not be putting the legislature in this position. This is to sort of show up and say there's an emergency and it's on you to help us sort it out, even though we can't tell you how we're going to sort it out yet. Is not the way business ought to be done. So I guess the question I would ask is, what can we do with staff? I'm guessing that we need some budget bill language. That's my first expectation. Am I getting? Yeah. Okay. So and the budget bill language would indicate that once we have certain deliverables from these folks, that they'll return them to, is it to this committee, the budget committee, or some other office? Who do we think? To the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, the JLBC. Okay. And what are the deliverables we want to see from these folks? A special project request.
Partner, just exactly. Partners, price.
Sir, it's the SPR that will identify all of those issues of scope as well as cost.
We want to understand whether that can,
so you're going to return that to the Joint Legislative,
or consolidated with the CHP. Okay. We don't have any understanding of that.
And we're going to look for a 60-day review so that we don't get rushed into, not that you would ever do this, but we've had folks who drop those on us in the middle of the winter holiday, and then all of a sudden the 30 days is gone from December 10th to January 10th. So we want 60 days to take a review. I'm going to ask you to work with our staff on both sides to flesh out the language on the budget bill and language, and then the criteria for determining whether or not what we've got is acceptable and satisfactory could be what. Let's look to staff for some help on that. So the Joint Legislative Budget Committee takes a look at that and then indicates that it's either acceptable or not acceptable. All right. I'm going to ask that the report come back to, that we specifically call out in today's meeting that the report come back to this budget subcommittee as well as part of the process.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Do we have a motion to approve on
Move
that
to
basis?
approve.
Motion by Lowenthal. Any other comment or testimony on this?
With the budget bill language as suggested by the chair.
All right. Senator Fuller, anything else? Just, okay, last time, guys. I'm not going to be, I can't speak for my colleagues and wouldn't presume to do so, but I'm not going to be very receptive to hearing a similar story either on this project or on other projects from the department going forward. Call the roll.
Senator Simitian?
Aye.
Senator Fuller? Aye. Senator Lowenthal?
Aye.
3-0. It is 12:30. We are going to recess until 2 o'clock, at which point we'll pick up the agenda where we left off.
Thank you.
Without objection, we are in recess.
May I leave my materials here?